Take a breath, because what I'm about to share with you is something thousands of highly accomplished immigrants are experiencing this very moment, and most people have no idea it's happening. The EB-1A visa. For years, it's been called the Einstein visa, the golden ticket, the path designed specifically for people at the absolute top of their field: scientists, artists, business leaders, Olympic athletes, professors who've changed entire industries. We're talking about people who've reached heights most of us can only dream about. And yet, in 2026, something has fundamentally changed. Recent data shows that approval rates for EB-1A applications have dropped to around 71%. Now, if you're not familiar with immigration numbers, that might not sound alarming. But here's the context you need to understand. Just a few years ago, approval rates were significantly higher. We're talking about a visa category that was once considered the most straightforward path for exceptional individuals. Today, it's become a minefield. So what happened? Why are people who would have sailed through the process 3 years ago now getting rejection letters? And more importantly, if you're someone who's thinking about applying or you've already submitted your application, what do you need to know right now to protect yourself? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's changed, who's at risk, and most crucially, the insider strategies that can still get your application approved even in this tougher climate. What is the EB-1A? Let me start by explaining what we're actually talking about here, because if you're watching this, you might be considering this path yourself, or you know someone who is. The EB-1A is an employment-based green card category. The A stands for Alien of Extraordinary Ability. Now, I know that phrase sounds dramatic, but that's literally the legal term. This isn't for people who are just good at their jobs. This is designed for individuals who have risen to the very top of their profession. We're talking about people who've won major international awards, researchers whose work has been cited thousands of times, business founders who've built companies that changed industries, artists whose exhibitions have toured the world, doctors who've pioneered new medical techniques, athletes who've competed at the Olympic level. Here's what made the EB-1A so attractive. Unlike other employment green cards, you don't need an employer to sponsor you. You can petition for yourself. You don't need a job offer. You don't need someone to prove they couldn't find an American worker to do your job. If you can demonstrate that you are genuinely extraordinary in your field and that your presence in the United States would substantially benefit the nation, you could get your green card. For decades, this was the dream path. Immigration attorneys called it the Mercedes of green cards. To qualify, you need to meet at least 3 out of 10 criteria set by USCIS. Things like, have you won nationally or internationally recognized prizes? Have you been written about in major media? Are you a member of associations that require outstanding achievement? Have you judged the work of others in your field? Have you made original contributions of major significance? Sounds straightforward, right? You check off 3 boxes, you submit your evidence, and if you're truly exceptional, you're golden. But here's what nobody tells you until it's too late. Meeting those criteria on paper is no longer enough, not in 2026, and that's where our Warren Buffett example comes in. The Warren Buffett thought experiment. Now, let me be crystal clear. Warren Buffett is an American citizen. He's not applying for any visa. But I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Imagine Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors in human history, walking into an immigration attorney's office as a foreign national saying, I want to apply for an EB-1A green card. His resume, he's built one of the most successful companies in the world. He's advised presidents. He's been featured on the cover of every major magazine you can name. He's donated tens of billions of dollars to charity. He's considered one of the most influential people on the planet. By any objective measure, Warren Buffett is extraordinary. And yet, here's the uncomfortable truth. In today's EB-1A climate, even someone like Warren Buffett might face serious scrutiny. Why? Because USCIS officers aren't just looking at whether you're accomplished anymore. They're digging deeper. They're asking, but what have you done lately? What evidence do you have that you're still at the top of your field right now? Can you prove that your future contributions will benefit the United States specifically? This shift in how applications are evaluated is exactly why approval rates have fallen. Officers are now applying what's called the final merits determination with far more intensity than ever before. And this is catching even the most qualified applicants off guard. What changed in 2026? So let's talk about what actually changed, because understanding this is critical. A few years ago, there was a major policy shift within USCIS. They issued new guidance on how officers should evaluate EB-1A petitions. On the surface, the criteria stayed the same, but the interpretation, that changed dramatically. Previously, if you could show that you met 3 of the 10 criteria, that was often enough to get you through the first stage. Then officers would do what's called a final merits determination, where they'd look at the totality of your case and decide if you truly qualified as someone of extraordinary ability. But here's what's different now. USCIS officers have been trained to be far more skeptical. Immigration attorneys across the country are reporting the same pattern. Applications that would have been approved 3 or 4 years ago are now getting requests for evidence or worse, outright denials. According to recent reports from immigration law firms, the denial rate has been climbing steadily. Officers are questioning the significance of awards. They're dismissing media coverage as not substantial enough. They're saying that membership in professional associations doesn't prove extraordinary ability. They're demanding more and more evidence that your work has had a major lasting impact. And here's the part that's really frustrating for applicants. The standards have become incredibly subjective. One officer might approve a case that another officer would deny. There's no clear line anymore. It's become a moving target. Why is this happening? Part of it is political. Immigration policy has been tightening overall. Part of it is bureaucratic. USCIS has been under pressure to reduce fraud and make sure only truly extraordinary individuals get through. And part of it is just the reality of how overwhelmed the system is. Officers are processing hundreds of cases, and when in doubt, they're erring on the side of caution, which means denying more applications. But here's what's keeping immigration lawyers up at night. Many of the people getting denied genuinely are extraordinary. They're not fraudulent applicants trying to game the system. They're legitimate candidates who've done everything right. But they're falling victim to this new, harsher evaluation standard. Why approval dropped to 71%? Let me break down the specific reasons why we're seeing this 71% approval rate. First, there's the evidence threshold problem. USCIS officers are now requiring what feels like an almost impossible amount of documentation. It's not enough to show that you won an award. They want you to prove that the award is truly nationally or internationally recognized, that the competition was significant, and that winning it places you in a tiny percentage of your field. They want independent evidence from third parties. They want detailed explanation letters. They want everything cross-referenced and verified. Second, there's the impact question. Officers are obsessing over whether your work has had a major significance in your field. They're not just looking at what you've done. They're trying to measure the ripple effect. Have other experts in your field built on your work? Has your research changed how things are done? If you're an artist, have critics written about how you've influenced the direction of contemporary art? This is incredibly difficult to prove, especially for people who are still relatively early in their careers, even if they're already exceptional. Third, there's what's called the sustained acclaim requirement. USCIS wants to see that you're not just someone who had one moment of success. They want evidence that you've maintained your status at the top over time. This is tripping up a lot of applicants who had a major achievement a few years ago, but haven't had something equally impressive recently. Fourth, and this is huge, there's the future benefit analysis. It's not enough anymore to prove that you're extraordinary. You have to convince the officer that allowing you to stay in the United States will substantially benefit the nation. This means you need to articulate very clearly what you plan to do, how it will impact your field, and why it matters to America specifically. A lot of applications fail because they don't address this convincingly. And finally, there's simple inconsistency. Different USCIS service centers are applying different standards. The same application might get approved at one center and denied at another. This has created a lottery-like atmosphere that's incredibly frustrating for applicants and attorneys alike. Real risks applicants are facing. Now let's talk about the real human impact of all this, because behind these statistics are actual people whose lives are in limbo. I've spoken with immigration attorneys who've shared stories that are heartbreaking. There's the medical researcher who developed a treatment that's helped thousands of patients who got denied because the officer didn't think the award she won was prestigious enough. There's the tech entrepreneur who built a company that employs 200 Americans who got a request for evidence asking him to prove that his work is truly original. There's the classical musician who's performed at Carnegie Hall, who was told that her media coverage wasn't substantial enough. These aren't people trying to cheat the system. These are genuine high achievers who followed the rules, hired good attorneys, submitted strong applications, and still got rejected. And here's what happens when you get denied. Your options become extremely limited. If you're in the U.S. on a different visa, like an H-1B, you might be okay for now, but your long-term path to a green card just became much more complicated. If you're outside the U.S., you're stuck. And if you've already invested tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees and application costs, that money is gone. But beyond the financial and legal consequences, there's the emotional toll. Imagine spending years building an extraordinary career, believing that your achievements speak for themselves, only to have a government officer tell you that you're not good enough. It's devastating, and the uncertainty is crushing. Applications are taking longer to process. Some people are waiting over a year just to hear back. During that entire time, they can't make major life decisions. They can't buy a house. They can't confidently take a new job. They're frozen in place, waiting. What USCIS officers are focusing on now. So what are USCIS officers actually looking for in 2026? Let me give you the insider perspective that most applicants don't understand. Officers are trained to be skeptical. Their default position is no. You need to overcome that skepticism with evidence that's so overwhelming, so well documented, and so clearly presented that they have no choice but to approve you. Here's what they're scrutinizing most intensely. They're looking at the quality of your evidence, not just the quantity. Submitting 300 pages of documents doesn't help if those documents don't clearly prove your extraordinary ability. They want specific, relevant evidence that directly ties to the criteria. They're questioning the credibility of your recommendation letters. It's not enough to have 5 professors write letters saying you're brilliant. Officers want letters from truly independent experts, people who are themselves recognized authorities in your field, who can speak specifically about why your work matters on a national or international level. They're analyzing the prestige of the platforms you've been featured on. If you've been written about in media, they're asking, is this a major publication? Or is it a small blog? Was this a substantial article about your work? Or was it just a brief mention? They're dismissing coverage that doesn't meet their threshold for major media. They're evaluating the selectivity of any awards or honors you've received. If you won an award, they're researching how many people typically win it. If it's something that hundreds of people receive every year, they're not going to be impressed. They want awards that go to only the top fraction of a percent in your field. And most importantly, they're looking at your narrative. Does your application tell a coherent story about why you're extraordinary? Can they read through your petition and come away thinking, yes, this person is clearly at the absolute top of their field, and the United States would benefit from having them here? If that story isn't crystal clear, you're at risk. Who should worry and who should not? Let me be direct about who's most at risk in this environment. If you're relying heavily on just meeting the bare minimum of 3 criteria, you should worry. The days of skating by with exactly 3 qualifying factors are over. You need to overwhelm the officer with evidence. If your achievements are primarily from several years ago and you don't have recent evidence of sustained acclaim, you should worry. Officers want to see that you're still active, still contributing, still at the top. If you're in a field where the criteria are harder to prove, like business or entrepreneurship, you should worry. These fields don't have the same clear markers of success that academia or athletics do, so you need to work much harder to document your case. If your evidence relies on awards or recognition from organizations that aren't well known internationally, you should worry. USCIS officers are U.S. government employees. If they've never heard of the award you won, they're going to be skeptical about how prestigious it really is. On the other hand, if you have truly exceptional, well-documented achievements, if you've worked with a skilled immigration attorney who understands the current climate, if you have strong letters from recognized experts, and if you can clearly articulate your future contributions to the United States, you're in a much better position. But I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Even strong candidates are facing challenges right now. Nobody is immune. That's why you need to be strategic. Insider tips to improve approval chances. All right, here's what you've been waiting for, the strategies that can actually make a difference. First insider tip, over-document everything. Don't just meet 3 criteria, try to qualify for 5 or 6. Build the strongest possible case. Every single claim you make needs to be backed up with evidence. And then back up that evidence with more evidence. If you say you won an award, include documentation about the award itself, how many people competed, who the judges were, and why winning it is significant. Don't assume the officer knows anything. Spell it all out. Second insider tip, invest heavily in your recommendation letters. This is where most applications fail. Your letters need to come from people who are themselves recognized as experts. They need to be detailed, specific, and focused on your contributions, not just your character. A generic letter that says, "This person is great," is worthless. You need letters that say, "This person's work on X changed how our entire field approaches Y, and here's the specific evidence of that impact." Work with your attorney to draft detailed outlines of what each letter should cover, and then find the right people to write them. Third insider tip, tell a compelling story. Your application isn't just a collection of evidence, it's a narrative. Why did you choose your field? What problems are you solving? What impact has your work had? Where are you going next? Officers are human beings. They respond to stories. If you can make them understand not just that you're accomplished, but why your work matters and why the United States needs you here, you dramatically increase your chances. Fourth insider tip, address the benefit to the United States head on. Don't make the officer guess. Spell out exactly how your presence in the U.S. will benefit the nation. Are you conducting research that will lead to medical breakthroughs? Are you creating jobs? Are you advancing American competitiveness in a critical field? Are you training the next generation of experts? Make this explicit. Write it clearly in your cover letter and have your recommenders reinforce it in their letters. Fifth insider tip, understand your service center. Different USCIS service centers have different approval rates and different quirks in how they evaluate cases. Some attorneys will actually file at specific service centers based on where they think a particular case will have the best chance. This is something you need to discuss with your lawyer. It might sound like gaming the system, but it's just understanding how the bureaucracy actually works. Bonus tip, be prepared for a request for evidence. Even strong cases are getting RFEs now. Don't panic if you get one. It's not a denial, it's an opportunity. Work with your attorney to respond thoroughly, addressing every single point the officer raised. Some of the strongest approvals come after well-crafted RFE responses. And here's something most people don't think about. Timing matters. If you're on the border of qualifying, sometimes it makes sense to wait 6 months or a year to build up more evidence rather than rushing to file. A stronger application filed later is better than a weak application filed now. Practical advice for current applicants. If you're in the middle of this process right now, here's what you need to do immediately. First, if you haven't filed yet, schedule a consultation with an immigration attorney who specializes in EB-1A cases specifically. Not just any immigration lawyer. You need someone who's filed dozens or hundreds of these petitions and who understands the current environment. Ask them about their recent approval rates. Ask them which service centers they file with. Ask them how they're adapting their strategy to the tougher standards. Second, audit your evidence with brutal honesty. Don't rationalize weak documentation. Look at each piece of evidence and ask yourself, would this convince a skeptical government officer? If the answer is anything less than absolutely yes, you need stronger evidence. Third, focus on quality over quantity. I've seen applications that are 500 pages long with hundreds of exhibits, but half of it is irrelevant filler. Officers don't have time to wade through that. Give them a clear, organized, powerful case that focuses on your strongest evidence. Fourth, if you've already filed and you're waiting, be patient but stay prepared. Make sure your attorney has a response strategy ready in case you get an RFE. Keep gathering evidence of ongoing achievements. If you publish a new paper, win a new award, get new media coverage, keep that documentation ready. You might be able to supplement your application. And fifth, have a backup plan. I hate saying this, but you need to be realistic. If your EB-1A gets denied, what's your plan B? Do you have another visa option? Can you reapply with stronger evidence? Can you pursue a different green card category? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Final warning and future outlook. Let me give you the hard truth about where things are headed. The EB-1A approval environment is not going to get easier anytime soon. If anything, it's likely to get tougher. Immigration policy is a political football, and depending on what happens in Washington, we could see even more restrictive interpretations of the criteria. But here's what I want you to understand. Despite all of this, the EB-1A is still one of the best paths to a green card for truly exceptional individuals. Yes, it's harder. Yes, you need to be more strategic. Yes, you need better documentation and better legal representation. But it's still possible. Thousands of people are getting approved every year. The 71% approval rate means that the majority of applicants are still succeeding. The question is, are you going to be one of them? The people who are getting approved in 2026 are the ones who understand what USCIS is looking for, who prepare meticulously, who tell compelling stories, and who refuse to give up when they face obstacles. If you're truly extraordinary in your field, if you've achieved things that most people never will, don't let these statistics scare you away. Let them motivate you to build the strongest possible case. And remember, this is about more than just you. The United States needs exceptional talent. The country was built by immigrants who brought extraordinary skills, creativity, and determination. The EB-1A exists because America recognizes that bringing the best and brightest from around the world makes us stronger, more innovative, and more competitive. So if you're watching this and thinking about your own EB-1A application, take this seriously, but don't lose hope. Prepare thoroughly, work with experts, build your case carefully, and give yourself the best possible chance. The landscape has changed, but opportunities still exist for those who know how to navigate it. If this video helped you understand what's really happening with EB-1A applications in 2026, please hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need this information. And subscribe to this channel because we're going to continue covering immigration policy changes, updates from USCIS, and practical strategies for anyone navigating the U.S. immigration system. This is information that could change your life, and I want to make sure you don't miss it. Here's what I want you to do right now. Go down to the comments and share your experience. Are you in the middle of an EB-1A application? Have you been approved or denied? What's your field? What challenges are you facing? Let's build a community where we can support each other and share knowledge. And if you know someone who's considering an EB-1A application, someone who's exceptionally talented and dreams of building their life in the United States, share this video with them. They need to know what they're walking into. The path might be harder than it used to be. But for those who are truly extraordinary, who are willing to fight for their dreams, who refuse to give up, the door is still open. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. If you've earned your place at the top of your field, prove it, document it, fight for it. Your extraordinary ability brought you this far. Now let it carry you the rest of the way. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.